I would like to introduce Martin Poschenrieder. If I apologize for butchering that. He works at Testmunk. They do automated app testing.
That's correct. Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for having me. I heard a lot of great things about you guys. Who's the youngest person here in the crowd? Like, I heard something like 9 or 10 or no? 12? Okay, pretty young. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Well, thanks a lot for having me. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about my journey and how we got started with mobile app testing. Because initially, we did something completely different. Basically, where my team and we built consumer apps when we realized the pain of app testing. And I want to walk you a little bit through my journey. And as you probably recognize from my accent, I'm not American. I originally come from Germany. And I moved here to the US like 3 years ago. And yeah, I had a couple of stopovers somewhere else. And I'd like to share that with you and tell you what we're doing today. Basically, first off, what actually means like automated app testing. If you could play the video, that would be amazing. Basically, I mean, I heard you guys are working on your student project. That means you have to make sure that it actually works before you submit it to the App Store. And I assume you basically, load the app on the device, and then with your finger you tap around and really make sure that it works. But what you can imagine is, there on iOS, some people still have an iPhone 4 or iPhone 4S, and you have to make sure it works. So we have a large set of devices, and after you upload the app, it gets tested across all of them, also tablets. So that's on Android, but we're on iOS as well. So within a very short amount of time, we enable mobile companies to make sure their app works and there are no crashes, and like you guys as users have the best experience. Okay, thanks. So as I mentioned, initially I grew up somewhere completely somewhere else, basically in a small town in Germany where there's not much innovation such as what's happening here, where everyone talks about startups. If you go out on the street and then like some startup entrepreneurs are pitching to investors. No, that was completely different. Where I grew up, a small town in the Black Forest in Germany. I'm sure some of you might have heard about like Black Forest cake or Black Forest ham. That's basically where I come from. And but very early I was excited about, so similar as you guys, very early I was excited about technology. Actually, I started with a friend of mine. We started to build websites and e-commerce shops. That was at a time where not everyone had really a website yet. And so, you had to actually convince people that, hey, you need a website. And they were like, yeah, well, really, do we need that? So there was a time, like 12, 13 years ago. I mean, I have to say Germany is a little bit generally behind with like IT or like web and mobile. So, people here in the US already adopted that earlier. But there was a time, and I very much enjoyed that, putting websites together and enabling companies to reach out to more customers. And then I actually did an internship for a German handset manufacturer. So there was a time before smartphones. I'm sure, I mean, you don't remember that because you guys directly started with the iPhone or Android phone. But there was a time where people didn't have smartphones and, so-called dumb phones. So where you actually couldn't do much rather than like sending some text messages. And, if it was a little bit advanced, you actually can play some games, but that was it basically. And quite interestingly, as part of my internship, I was in the QA department, so quality assurance department, where the phones were manufactured in China, and then we had like phones like pre-release phones came on my desk, and I had to basically I was involved in the testing process, so I had to make sure, okay, can you send text messages, does it work, and so on. And I still remember I had one phone, and actually the company wanted to release it like a couple of weeks later, and the phone that I got, it was like I pressed a button and suddenly the whole phone switched over to in Chinese. And it took me like, I guess like an hour to suddenly find the way back, because like, I mean, I don't speak Chinese and can't read it. So that was, and that was basically kind of a version that the company wanted to release it. And so very early I realized the importance of really quality. And if you want to have an impact with your app ultimately and reach like a large amount of users, the app has to have a certain quality, because else people will be disappointed. They will, if you download an app and within, let's say, the first 10, 15 seconds, if you're kind of confused or it doesn't work or it's really slow, you will be disappointed. You basically delete it and you even maybe tweet about it that you had a bad experience about it. So I very early realized that. So after basically my kind of internship and studying in Germany, I joined an international like IT consulting company called Accenture, where within like 2.5 years, I worked on various IT projects all over Europe, and I had a really good time. But nevertheless, I kind of realized, or I remembered the old days when I was running my own company, how much fun it was, but excitements and ups and downs. So I wanted to get back to it, and basically what I in that sense, taught my parents that I quit my good, well-paid job, and I want to start a company in that sense. And they were like, of course, my mom was like, oh my God, what are you gonna do? And like, this is risky and so on. So, but nevertheless, I quit my job, and I was looking to get more plugged into the startup ecosystem. So you have to know, here in Silicon Valley, I mean, as I mentioned, like everyone is really passionate about startups, but back in Germany or generally Europe, it's not like the hub here. I mean, even other parts in the US are different. So, I mean, now a startup ecosystem is evolving around Berlin, and also London is doing more and more. And I wanted to plug myself back into that ecosystem. So where can I find people with ideas that are motivated, want to do cool things? And so in London is a big hub, and especially University UCL in London is very, very entrepreneurial. So I did my master's studies there in technology entrepreneurship. I actually believe you can't teach in that sense entrepreneurship, but it was a really good way for me to basically be surrounded with other people and learn, some of the things evolving around startups, but as well as like just network with people similar as you guys are here. You meet like really brilliant people, and that maybe at some point you might start a company with. And that was basically my main goal, why I decided to study in London. And actually now it comes to the second video. During my times of my studies, I started a project with a couple of my classmates that was called Tip Gain, where basically, just hold on a moment before starting it, where basically kind of our idea was, okay, we were all new to London, and there are a lot of cool new places, but we didn't know about it. So we felt like, okay, there should be an easier way how you can share certain recommendations. And so we're working on a concept to make it easier to give word of mouth recommendations. And that's kind of like a presentation video that we did at the very early stages. And actually that was our entry point to come here, but I will mention that in a moment. And you will actually realize I was wearing some sort of suit in the video, so London is more like suit and tie, and actually now I'm here with t-shirt. That's actually quite funny. It's London, it's rainy. That was our first customer. That was a retail store. Actually, the owner was also German, so it was good. We directly made the connection. So you basically take we had some sort of barcode scanner in the app, and then you get the promotion. And then for sharing it on Facebook, basically you get a discount at the store, and then someone else sees it, can share it again, and then bring someone back to the store. So that was one store. We then branched out to several restaurants and signed them up. think I will also talk in a bit. You will recognize a little bit my, I don't know, touch of British accent.
We believe that social media is such a key point to our
So that's the customer?
And TipGain gives us another opportunity, if not a key opportunity, to engage further with our customers once they have left the store. It's the idea that we all believe in recommendation of our friends, and by them recommending us, not just by word of mouth, but also through social media, it gives us another opportunity to constantly to continue to interact with them, but also to
that was
interact
iOS 6, I
with their
believe, at that
friends
time.
and colleagues.
To win the London Entrepreneur Challenge is really a kick-off to focus on the business and to even push harder.
Me.
It's a win-win-win situation. For the shopper who's in the store, he gets a reward, the friend gets a tip and a reward, and the store has more business. TipGain will
Okay.
revolutionize the way.
Okay, thanks a lot. So coming back to the presentation, basically that was the concept that I worked on with a couple of my classmates during my master studies, and we signed up a few restaurants and businesses in London, and that was actually the idea that we got into Y Combinator. And so then, especially at the very beginning when we got here, like, yeah, I would say the YC partners were a little bit skeptical about the concept. So, you know, the only way how we could really prove them that it works, it was like, hey, signing up restaurants. So I kind of spent like, I believe, like crazy days, like going to every restaurant in Palo Alto, Mountain View, I think in San Jose. And still today, sometimes when I go back to downtown, I remember like the days like, yeah, I talked to this restaurant owner, I talked to him like, 3 years ago in that sense. But actually what we realized that I think today, or especially like 3 years ago, there was like kind of everyone was a little bit sick and tired of like discounts and Groupon and so on. So it really didn't get much traction, and so we were pretty frustrated, because you have to imagine we worked on this concept during our studies, and then we made it to Silicon Valley, and now we're gonna conquer the world, and suddenly you realize like, wow, you were pushing like working day and night, and then like it doesn't really find adoption due to several reasons, and so we were really pretty frustrated by it, and so kind of we decided like, okay, let's kind of pause the project and like think about, okay, maybe we work on something else, and so we kind of spent a couple of weeks really brainstorming and thinking about what's next, and now I forgot a part here. Actually, I have here a couch. Actually, before we got here to the US, it was actually like pretty tough times where at the end we got funding for the project from our university, which was amazing. But actually, there was a time where like I think I had, there was enough money on my bank account maybe to pay for another 1.5 months rent, and so I kind of already were considering like sleeping on someone else, my friend's couch, so that I basically can survive in that sense. But then we got funding from the university that helped us to really push, and then we got into YC, so I kind of missed that story. And yeah, we got then into YC. And that was actually our first kind of startup house in San Jose, where you have to imagine you're here, you have to work somewhere. So the easiest way is, to basically work where you sleep in that sense. So the challenge was a little bit to find a house first, and as you can imagine, here in the US, it's all about kind of credit score when you want to rent. And then I probably did like 20 viewings, and they all want to say like, hey, what's your credit score? And I was like, yeah, I'm from Germany. So I don't have a credit score. I don't have a bank account yet, but I'm going to have in 2 weeks. And we just got $150,000 funding. As you can imagine, not everyone really believed that in that sense. But there was a nice guy who basically rented the house that you see here to us, and then I believe like the first day or so we slept on like air mattress, and then I somehow sorted out a U-Haul truck, and we went to IKEA and bought some desks and chairs and table. And actually, I think our living room table today, and actually also the beds that we have today, so we moved like 2 years ago, is still from the initial house. It's quite interesting. That was kind of our first office. yeah, with like 4 or 5 desks in that sense. So, okay. So what you have to imagine now, coming back to the initial story, we decided to stop our like tip gain project, and then we didn't really know what's happening and how do you really come up with ideas. And there's certain creativity techniques and so on. And some people say like, yeah, maybe you have this enlightening moment when you take a shower. So I believe I took like 4 or 5 showers during the day and still didn't have an idea. And then next day I took again 4 or 5 showers, and I was like, hey, idea, where are you? So it took us quite some while to really figure out like, hey, what do we want to do? And especially once we kind of have this pressure, because we were in like these 3 months like YC. So at the end is kind of the demo day, and we were like, oh my God, like, we had like dinners every Tuesday, and they were like, every team was reporting like, oh, we built this new cool feature, we signed up this customer, and yeah, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, yeah, we decided to pause our project. We are kind of brainstorming right now, and which was kind of frustrating. And so I think for like 1.5 weeks we didn't really know what's next. And so since we're all from abroad, and our parents especially constantly ask like, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? And at least our parents were not on Facebook at that time. We felt like, okay, there has to be like a cool new way of really keeping them updated. So we built within like 4 weeks an app called Hi Mom, where you actually can send like you take a picture and you sign on the screen and write a message, and then basically your parents or whatever you add to it receives a certain digital version, or you can even have the option as a printed version, and then this person gets like a real postcard delivered. And that was I would say quite fun to launch that in such a short amount of time, and we got a few thousand users, which was pretty cool. But I think we kind of maybe jumped too quickly on something, and we kind of realized like, hey, we just don't want to be another app in the App Store, and want to have kind of a bigger impact, we felt. So we actually, we launched it, and I think a couple of weeks before, like, because demo day was coming and you kind of were supposed to like, hey, present it, we decided like, hey, yeah, we cannot really imagine to really go up on stage and present this, Hi Mom. And so we said like, okay, we actually went to PG, so Paul Graham, and we were like walking into the room like, yeah, and he said like, hey guys, what's up? And then like, yeah, we don't want to present a demo day, we don't feel confident about it to continue with it. And he was like super cool. He said like, yeah, guys, no worries. Hey, that's your chance now. You can start from scratch. Like you can build everything, like anything you want. And so he was very supportive, because we felt like, oh my God. And actually we didn't present, so in this or when we worked on that at this demo day then, because we didn't want to continue there, we didn't know what's next. And so we took a little more time off in that sense and really thought about, okay, what do we want to do next? And especially thought about what are some of the pain points that we had. And so I can just give you, because I know many of you are really entrepreneurial. So whenever you kind of have a big pain point, write it down, because that's potentially something where, let's say, if it doesn't really exist something good yet, where you can really make an impact there and build a solution. And basically, when we worked on our consumer app, on consumer apps, every time it came to, okay, we want to launch a new version, so how did we test it? We basically tapped the app and went through it, and then we had an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet with a lot of rows, and on the right you see a column with the different devices, different OS versions, and it was usually me who had to go through this plan, and well, couple of others in my team as well. We kind of alternated, but very often we flipped the coin and said like, okay, who should go for the testing today in that sense? And so in that sense, I actually hated testing, and I thought like, hey, there has to be something better to make that easier. And that was the point when we started Testmunk, and you remember the video where like everything was automated. And initially we started just with a few devices that you can basically upload and execute your test run on. And the cool part is then when you execute it, you actually get a test report with screenshots, device logs. That makes it really, really easy then for the developer to find what's wrong and where's the crash with the device log, and you don't have this back and forth and trying to figure out what it is. And that's really exciting. So today, basically like starting basically switching from Hammam to Testmunk. We switched like a little bit more than 2 years ago. We have like several of the top apps using us. So like Flipboard and Newsreader app is one of them, and like several others, like really big ones. I'm sure one of them you at least have on your home screen. So which is really exciting, and we're growing. So it's pretty crazy and lots of fun. And so to mention a little bit how it works, because actually I know that you guys are working on your project and you have your presentation soon. So maybe you want to consider writing an automated test that actually checks if it works across several devices. And just a little diving into a little bit of the technical parts, how it works. Basically, you can write your tests. Here you see it on the left side, or on the other screen over there. It's a test case syntax. It's called Cucumber, where it's kind of a business readable language where you basically can say like, yeah, then I touch, and if you have a login button, you say touch the login button, and it will basically touch the button, and you can swipe left, right, and you can do various things. So you can perform certain actions. We call it test steps. Each row here is basically a test step, like an action that you would do, manually right now with your finger, but actually you can set up a certain script that executes it. And when it's being executed, you see how it changes on the view, and then you can also take like screenshots, as well as you can say like, okay, after I go through the login process, you want to verify, hey, I'm on the welcome screen, good, and you can search for that. And there's more on our documentation, docs.testmunk.com, so feel free to check it out. And as I mentioned, if you are using some sort of like automated testing for your project, I'm happy, write me an email. I'm happy to feature your project on our blog. So we have many subscribers on our blog. Happy to feature your student project on our blog so that you get some press there and some viewers and more downloads. Happy to do that. In that sense, that was it already. A little bit about my journey, how I got into Testmunk and what we're doing today. Thanks a lot for having me.
Time to take a couple questions?
Yeah, totally.
Sure. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Hello. I have two questions. The first one is, how did you find your team and decide to work with them? And the next one is, how did your job change as your responsibilities grew, and how did you handle it?
Yeah. In terms of team, basically through previous work as well as university. So, for example, Mashoud was working with me. Like we met each other in London, studied at the same university, and other people I met through friends and recommendations, or basically then also just reaching out to people in that sense. That's generally a good way. And the second part was like responsibilities, how it changed.
Yeah, like you started out as a developer, right? Or like a...
So I'm kind of all sorts of things. I would say like not per se like hardcore developer in that sense. I do some light coding in that sense. But I do like various things today. And I would say at the moment a lot in terms of sales and marketing. Previously more helping clients in terms of scripting test cases. Previously more UI design, UX, Photoshop. So various things in that sense. And I guess, I mean, we're still very much early stage. We're just like 5 people. So there are a lot of kind of shared responsibilities and different activities in that sense.
Right here, in case you can see me. So what's the one skill or characteristic that has made you the entrepreneur that you are today?
One characteristics. I would say, I mean, in general, what's very much important, I think, is persistence. Because, you know, there will always be like people who say like, yeah, that's not gonna work, and so on. And, you know, then you just have to kind of, you have to, I would say you have to kind of find the balance between, let's say, getting kind of the right feedback, but as well as you have to kind of have persistence and believing in it. And that's sometimes a little bit hard, you know, because if you don't, you know, maybe with our first project like TipGain, maybe we should have like kind of changed earlier. I would say there were certain maybe indicators where, if I look back now, okay, maybe at certain points we should have maybe, let's say, re-evaluated certain things. But yeah, I mean, generally you need kind of persistence, I would say. Say it again. So what's the most important thing that I've learned in the company? I would say, I mean, in general, just make users like really happy, liking the product, because then they're gonna recommend it to other people. So come to that point where really people love using the product, like very often, and then they're gonna recommend it to their friends and people that they know.
I have another question.
Yeah.
How did you deal with the really low points in morale in the startup world?
The really low points? I think you just kind of have to know that, you know, it's kind of a roller coaster, and then there are the low points and the really like peak points, really like where everything is like amazing. And I think just knowing, okay, let's say being a little bit self-aware, like, hey, right now, like everything is amazing, or let's say when you have a bad day, oh my God, like you know, when you're really frustrated, kind of knowing, okay, maybe that's now like a low point, and just knowing, okay, it will get better again, in that sense. Sometimes in these days, it's also like a lot of emotional. So you kind of have to know, like, okay, maybe now emotionally I'm such like in a bad mood, or everything is frustrating, and just kind of know, okay, maybe I just should sleep now over it, you know, and look again tomorrow, and then will be a better day in that sense. I mean, everyone has certain different techniques. One thing what I'm trying out now and getting a little bit more into it is like also some sort of meditation. So I'm very much interested in that.
Over here. Yeah, how much do you typically like charge a company to test their app, and like what are the differences between testing for like Android and iOS?
So how much do we charge, and what are the difference between iOS and Android? So we have a free plan where, you know, you can already get started and like run tests on a device, and then our next plan is $790 per month, and then $1,900 per month. That's where you can run on all the devices, and so you as a company don't have to buy it, and mainly also like you reduce your whole time to market, because you know, once you save, you know, a lot of time in terms of time to market, that basically then cost savings for the company. So that's how we justify the cost mainly.
Is there any factors that at first time you don't think it's important to your startup, but with time going, it's become a more important factor, you know, or the marketing, something like this?
So if I understood you correctly, so what are certain parts of the startup changing in terms of focus?
I mean that, for example, first time you don't think that will be care much, but maybe as you become bigger and bigger, and it care more about this. So I want to know that about it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a constant like prioritization, because in a startup, you have a lack of resources. And I mean, you're working on your student project. I'm sure you have so many ideas. Hey, you want to do this and that, and then you kind of realize once you work on things like, oh my God, it takes actually pretty long. And then like you don't consider certain scenarios. And like, oh my God, yeah, I haven't thought about this and that. So you just have to say like, okay, what's really, really crucial? Like if we don't have this thing, like are we gonna lose a customer, or is someone like super like mad at us? And I mean, we also have like so many things that we want to do in terms of like enhancing the product and stuff, but you know, you can't do everything in that sense. You have to say no to things, to a lot of things.
So I have two questions. One is, what do you think is like one of the biggest challenges of making a startup? And the other one is, like, what do you think is making like Testmunk more successful than your previous startups? Like, was it the business plans? Was it the idea? Or like, you know, what were the reasons do you think this one is like doing better than the other previous one?
Yeah. I think what is great now with Testmunk is that we really see like customer using it regularly and like benefiting so much about it, like shipping better apps, users are more happy, better app ratings, the whole time to market is faster. So like we're getting all this positive feedback, and like customers are paying for it. And I think that's the best validation that we can have. And I think with previous project, I mean with the postcard app, you know, we didn't really have many people kind of willing to pay for a postcard. And also before, when we worked on pitching to restaurants, they kind of were yeah, they didn't really pay much for it, and didn't really see much the value. So and that's completely different now.
Is the infamous cup noodle diet like a thing in the startup world? Like, did you live off of, or just what I'm saying is, how was your lifestyle while working at a startup?
I mean, we're still a startup in that sense. So, in what particular, what do you mean?
Like, a lot of people say like they're very strapped for cash for like many things, like people living in, I don't know, just like, how do you phrase it? Okay, so,
As far as like, did you ever have to make any sacrifices as far as like your cost of living, like the way you live from before startup and after startup? Like, did you, you know, spend less on food, less on housing, you know, crash on people's couches, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so when I worked for a consulting company, like I earn more than now. And usually, let's say, the more experience you gain, the more usually you earn more in that sense. But kind of for me, it was a drop. But I'm enjoying it now way more, you know, although it's more stressful and so on. But kind of what I realized, and I mean, when I worked at a consulting company, I actually was like every weekend I got like the nicest rental car, you know, I drove like, you know, like really big cars every time. Because the project site was usually somewhere else, and then they give me a rental car to come home. And so what I realized, kind of the compensation point of view, let's say in terms of happiness, is not the primary point for me. It's more like having an impact, really changing things, and like if we can enable app companies to ship better apps, and that, you know, users out there have a better user experience and a better quality. That's something that I realize like I'm really passionate about. And so I basically right now I'm just like super happy bringing that to more companies out there. And that's kind of then the reward, you know, when we get like positive feedback from a client, like, hey, amazing, you know, previously we struggled with that it's so much easier now. And, you know, we still keep our costs very much low in that sense. And, you know, in that sense, I mean, startup is always kind of, you have to kind of bootstrap. And in that sense, yeah.
So you guys are right now essentially a service company, right? But you guys used to build products. So how? All right, so you guys are now a service company.
We're software as a service in that sense.
Right.
So basically, people use our product over the cloud.
Right, but before you used to build like apps, like just consumer-oriented products. So like, how are the two? How do they differ in your opinion?
So I mean, before we basically started a couple of consumer apps in that sense. So we were targeting, like, if you call it like business to consumers. Now we're targeting business to business. So where our clients are primarily companies that have an app or build an app in that sense, and they use our product for testing. So I mean, it's a with business to business, basically, I mean, as you know, business to customer. I mean, on the app side, you generally the customer or pays way less in that sense if you download an app, or I mean, the monetization part of things are differently, and also certain marketing things are differently, and so on. Yeah.
What would you say the most rewarding aspect of your job is?
The most rewarding, I would say, bringing people together who are like passionate about or want to work together on the same goal, but as well like just when customers are happy, and by using our product that they benefit from it, I think.
All right, do we have any more questions? All right, last question.
What is the biggest problem that you're facing right now, and what are you doing about it?
The biggest problem? Right now I'm looking for someone good in sales. So, because I have just way too much work. So actually, if you know someone who's interested in let's say, doing tech sales, let me know. Yeah, that's maybe right now this week, I would say, a challenge to find someone, or basically I'm having interviews and so on.
All right, so if anybody has a solution for hiring. Okay. Oh, we have. All right. Actual last question.
What's your definition of a good salesperson? What kind of like characters are you looking for?
Definition of a good salesperson, I think in general, a good listener, but also a person who likes to talk to other people, and a friendly attitude, but as well as, I would say, certain persistence, because very often, when we, let's say someone gets in touch with us and you kind of follow up, I mean, people are getting so many emails, and you kind of want to make sure that you follow up with them, say like, hey, I'm here if you need any help with getting started, how can we help you? Understanding like kind of the pain points of the customer, because that might be a little bit different from customer to customer. So really understanding it and thinking about, okay, did we already solve that problem with another customer? And basically kind of educating the customer in that sense. And having like a friendly dialogue with the customer and staying on top of it, basically following up with the customer and saying like, hey, we're here. And very often the customer's happy, like, hey, thanks a lot for getting back in touch. Yeah, you were on my mind, but didn't have a chance. Thanks for getting back to me. So these are some of the things I would say are important.
All right, thank you very, very much for coming, Martin.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. Best of luck.
All right, thanks.